Okay, hello everyone. I'm Rebecca Taylor Shaw, and this is your Mindset Mastery Hour. And today I'm going to be talking about ignoring circumstances. The concept itself, I think, is brought from Neville Goddard, who is a favorite of mine when it comes to the philosophy of manifesting and the philosophy of influencing outcomes and realities. And that just certainly, when I came across him only about 4 or 5 years ago, aligned completely with my work with hypnotherapy and working with people's subconscious mind to make changes. And he's not the only one who talks about ignoring circumstances. There's a lot of other philosophies out there that align with that. But that phrase itself, we're going to go over and kind of talk about what that is exactly when you're talking about ignoring circumstances and how it can help you to get what you want in life. So, ignoring circumstances is probably one of the most difficult things to deal with when you are on a path of trying to create a goal for yourself, align with that goal, and achieve that goal. And along the way, things aren't aligning with that outcome or that goal, or you're perceiving situations, circumstances, people's behaviors, etc., to not be aligning with that goal. We get upset, we get anxious, we get frustrated, we get discouraged. Emotionally, we will have a lot of emotionally charged energy around those circumstances that we've given a narrative to that don't align with what we want. So the key to many, many situations, especially ones where you don't have a hand in changing them, you want to learn the art of ignoring circumstances. Now, it doesn't mean that you're in delusion, whereas there are some manifestors out there that would lead you to believe, and maybe they do this themselves effectively, but you don't have to, where you ignore the circumstance to the degree you look like you're crazy or delusional because it's happening. So, for example, if you were saying to yourself, it's sunny outside, it's sunny outside, and people hear you and they look outside and it's raining, they might think you're crazy. So I'm not talking about that, but circumstances really in life to get you where you want to be are simply an outpouring of a result of your previous thoughts, your previous stories to yourself, your previous stories that you say to other people, your beliefs about yourself, and your worldview beliefs, which is how you believe and think the world works. So, for example, if you are trying to earn a certain amount of money per month in your sales job and it's just not happening, and you're saying to yourself, I'm trying, but it's just too hard, or it's difficult, or it's a difficult road, or you have to work harder and longer to make more money. Those types of flat statements, blanket statements about how the world works is your worldview. And so oftentimes the circumstances we find ourselves in are a result of those past beliefs, those past stories, whether we took them on ourselves or whether they were given to us by our parents. You could have inherited your parents' beliefs that you have to sacrifice to get ahead in this world. You have to work longer and harder to make more money. You could have been raised by a parent who had gone through divorce a few times and says, there's no good men out there. So you have to be really, really taking inventory of what your beliefs are about yourself, about how the world works, And one of the best ways to discover if any of those beliefs are going against you getting what you want in life is to look at your current circumstances that are unpleasant to you, not in alignment with what you want. Maybe on the surface level, you're perceiving that they're telling you you're not getting what you want. So, for example, if you're in a relationship and it's in the first few months and it doesn't work out, and then you could say to yourself, oh, things never work out for me, or I'm never chosen, or something like that. Whereas if you ignore circumstances, what you would say to yourself, you're not going to pretend like that breakup didn't happen or that the person said, I'm moving on. What you would do to ignore circumstances is turn your mind to what you want instead, or even if you're really artsy about this and want to go a step deeper, is what beliefs am I currently holding about myself, about relationships, for example, or in the other one about money? What beliefs am I holding that generated this situation for me that is not in alignment with what I want? And so it gets easier and easier to ignore circumstances, meaning not giving them an emotional charge, which means you don't give them a knee-jerk narrative that they're bad. So, not making as much money as you want this month, not getting the relationship that you want. You could say both of those things are bad. And the minute that you label something as bad, you're going to feel bad. That means you're going to feel an emotional charge of some kind of negative emotion, anxiety, discouragement, hopelessness, anger, frustration, etc. And then the minute that you hold those emotional charges as you're saying those things to yourself, oh, it never works out for me, da da da, then what you're doing in that moment is you're creating more of what you don't want. So if our external circumstances are merely reflections of our internal state, Neville Goddard says everyone is you pushed out. I would say every person is you pushed out. Every situation is a reflection of what beliefs you're holding inside. And every person and how they interact with you is a reflection of what you believe to be true about yourself. So one of the key points in ignoring circumstances is about not giving the circumstance that you don't want, that isn't in alignment with your goal, and turning your mind to the outcome you desire. So as what you don't want that's happening becomes unimportant, you lower the importance, it loses its emotional charge. So the other way you can do it is go to a higher perspective of, okay, well, this relationship didn't work out because when I really look at my list of my, the attributes of my ideal partner, he really wasn't it. So then you're reframing the circumstances, you're reframing your attitude about the circumstances so that you could even give yourself the narrative, well, it didn't work out because this person isn't in alignment with the attributes that I wanted. And with that said, of course, it's going to fall away so that my person that is in alignment with the attributes that would make me most happy has room to come in. But you can do that, and how you want to do that is without an emotional charge. That means not getting resentful, not being angry, not being frustrated for very long. I mean, everyone's going to go through those moments. What I notice for myself, guys, is that it's not that I don't feel disappointment or frustration or whatever if something like that was to come up, but I just cycle through it. I process the emotions so much more quickly, because if I reflect back, I go, okay, I see why that didn't work out. It's not really in alignment with what I want. So I can just ignore that circumstance and move on. And when you're ignoring something, think about in your everyday life, if you have the choice between going one way on the road and another way on another road to your work, and neither one is better, they're both about the same. You choose to go down this road, you're not thinking about that other road, guys. You're not thinking that it's bad. You're not resenting something about that choice, or that, if you're just really turning your focus to where you're going and what you want instead. Let's say you decide in the morning, and I use this example today, that you're going to eat eggs for breakfast instead of a protein shake. You just turn your mind to the eggs, make the eggs do it, and you go on. You don't have any emotional charge about the choice you didn't make. You're just focusing on what you want instead. And that's that. And that's how you want it to be. You want it to be that matter of fact in your day-to-day experiences. And again, that removing of the emotional charge is really, really important, because if this external is a reflection of our internal state, then every time you express an emotionally charged narrative or statement, like, oh, this is too hard, this is too difficult, why do things always have to be so hard? When you ask a question like that, you are basically pulsing out into your field of consciousness an emotionally charged thought, statement, belief, story, which is embedded with beliefs, and you're pulling down from the multiverse. Go back and watch my video about the multiverse and timelines. But when you have that emotionally charged statement, why does this always happen to me, etc., then you're pulling down from the multiverse a timeline where you will experience more of that. So that's really, really the most important thing about quote unquote ignoring circumstances, is that you can turn away from the situations, the timelines, the experiences that you don't want to experience, and turn your mind to what you want to experience, and do that with only putting your emotional energy into desired outcomes, the wish fulfilled, what you ultimately want. And sometimes what we ultimately want isn't always what we think we want. So say a relationship, you may want this relationship, and then ultimately it's really not in alignment with your goals or the aspects that you really want in a person. So sometimes life will deviate us from what our logical mind says is the path to getting what we want, whether it's a person or a situation. And we have to be patient, and you have to trust. That's where faith comes in, is that once you lock into the GPS, what it is you're wanting, then your job is to surf through the experiences in life and trust that everything is unfolding just as it should. Everything is unfolding for your highest good. Everything is unfolding to bring you to that goal that you desire. But oftentimes it's not going to unfold the way you expect it to, with who you expect it to, or in the timing that you expect it. And you know what? That's the adventure of life, right? That's the adventure, is not knowing exactly how it's going to unfold. And it's so funny how, me included, all of us can get caught up in wanting certainty, wanting to know how things unfold, wanting to know this is the way it's going to go. And I'll talk about that in a minute, because there is something to be said for that. Wanting things to go how you want them to go. But for the most part, the more you can flow with life, and the more you can just trust, I am going to have that relationship I want. I'm going to have that steady income and dependable income that I desire, but it may not come from this particular client or this particular person. And I trust that. and I'm going to flow forward. And if something doesn't turn out the way I want, I don't have to get upset or give it this emotional pushback. Watch my video on resistance, where I talk about that resistance to what is. And basically go more with the flow, trust that everything is unfolding for your highest good. And so when we give attention to the negative circumstances, when you talk to other people about what's going wrong in your life, how often do you sit down with a friend and have a bitch fest about what's going wrong in your life, or what's going wrong in your relationship, or what's going wrong with your work situation? And then the key is the universe is hearing that, or pulsing that out into your field of consciousness. It doesn't know the difference between wanted or unwanted. If you're speaking it, you're creating it. So you've got to become so much more vigilant with your thoughts, with your narratives. And I say that, and it sounds like a lot of work if you're in this habit of, talking with people about all your problems. There's a time and a place for it. If you're working with a coach or a therapist or someone, and you're talking to that person and you're talking through that problem because you want to take new action steps, because you want to acquire a different mindset or a different set of beliefs, or have somebody help you with your blind spots, it is fine to talk about your problems, because you're talking about them to get to a different place mentally. You're talking about them to evolve and grow, hopefully quickly, right? Versus typically when we're just venting to a friend, a family member, a coworker, we're not really expecting or even perhaps wanting them to give us enlightenment, give us insight. We're just wanting to vent and feel better from the venting. But when you do that, you are pulsing out into your field of consciousness an emotionally charged story of the exact thing that you don't want about this person or your job or whatever the situation is. And then it's like the old time jukebox at the restaurant or the bar, and you press the button and it searches for those CD and pulls it down from the selection of 100 CDs. When you say those stories, you are pulling down from the multiverse that outcome. So you want to process that stuff quickly. That means you get in, you get out. That means you get the lesson, you understand why this has been created or possibly created or partly created from your thoughts and your beliefs. You don't give excess importance to things that you're unhappy with. You don't give excess importance to the situations or the aspects of a relationship that you don't want. And you want to really spend more and more time mentally thinking about what you want. That's the power of gratitude. I never fully understood the power of gratitude, and I had a hard time with it about 20 years ago, when I was married and in a really bad place in my marriage, very unhappy. And I had a hard time even thinking about just simple things in life that I was grateful for. And then I got into a practice of doing it just once a week at first. And then I started doing it every day. And the power of it is when you're in gratitude, you typically, if you're truly in gratitude, it's not just a thought, it's not just a mental thing. There's a feeling with that. I am so grateful for, living in a home that I feel happy in. I'm so grateful for living in a home that feels peaceful to me. And then that feeling, I'm pulsing it out to my universe, to my field of consciousness, and I'm reinforcing being on a timeline where that persists. Okay. So our attention basically to negative circumstances strengthens them by feeding them energy. So you have to really ask yourself, what outcomes timelines am I feeding with my energy, with my emotional energy? Am I feeding the ones I want? Am I feeding the ones I don't want? And again, it doesn't mean that they don't exist. So think about it in whatever space you're in right now. I'm sure most of you are indoors. If I say to you, I want you to look around and see the windows in this room, if there are windows, you would look at the windows and focus on the windows. Now, I could say to you, there are pictures hanging on the wall in this room, or there's furniture in this room, but you weren't thinking about the furniture until I mention it. You were thinking about the windows or the doors because I was talking about that. So it's not that they don't exist. It's just that you are essentially ignoring them. So we ignore things all the time. We focus on what we want. Now, have you ever been in a relationship where you just get this pet peeve about something someone's doing and you just keep thinking about it? And the more and more you think about it, it seems like the more and more they do it and you feel like they're doing it just to ignore you. Well, this is a common phenomenon, and this is the what you focus on grows at work, right? Versus with kids, a lot of times, if you've raised kids, you may have heard about this philosophy about just ignoring the bad behavior to extinction. Basically, is redirecting your mind, acknowledging the positive, focusing on what they're doing right, appreciating what they're doing right, and basically kind of trying to downplay the things that they're doing wrong. So there's evidence of this whole concept around us in our everyday life, everywhere. Um, Now, okay, so what do you do if you need to ignore the circumstance? You can turn your mind to living in the end, as Neville Goddard calls it, which is using your imagination to create the desired state. Think about what you want instead. Now, again, if that circumstance comes up again and again, I think what's really important is that you have to look at what beliefs do I hold that are perpetuating me in a circumstance that's undesired like this. So if there's a pattern, then it's always, you've got to do the belief work. You've got to have someone help you identify what those hidden beliefs are. If you can't do it for yourself, your friends may know, your family may know. Of course, a coach or somebody, a therapist might know. But when circumstances come up, the other thing you can do is just say, no, this is what I want instead. And it's funny because sometimes you'll see this with kids. Kids have this natural ability to ignore circumstances. And I laugh because my son, when he was little, he was very strong-minded. And sometimes it created quite a stress in the parenting situation, because if he wanted something, he wasn't going to take no for an answer. But upon reflecting and understanding the whole concept of ignoring circumstances, you may see someone in your life, adult or child, that just basically doesn't take no for an answer in a healthy way. So it's like, I remember when I was in high school and I was applying to colleges, and I wanted to go to University of Virginia, and I went to see my counselor and I told her what I wanted, and she's like, yeah, well, good luck with that. I don't, it's very competitive, and um, it's really hard to get into, and you'd be lucky to get into that. Your grades are good, but blah, blah, blah. And she was just really kind of downplaying it. And I walked out of that office, and I'll never forget that I was just like, I'll show her. I'm going to get into that school. So I basically ignored the circumstance of her telling me that she didn't think that I could get into University of Virginia. I went and wrote my admission essay, and sure enough, I got in. And a big part of it, looking back now, was just I refused to accept her narrative. I refused to accept her version of what was going to happen. And so that's like a practical situation where I was doing it and I didn't even realize I was doing it. Now with my son, it might be something where he says, I say, well, you're not gonna You don't get dessert before you eat dinner. And he'll be like, oh, yes, I do. And then, but that's probably not the best example, but with some kids, they just have this natural mindset that it's happening, and then you'll meet adults where it's just like, oh, no, no, this is the way it's happening. And when I used to play sort of these fun mind games with myself, I would say to myself, well, in my matrix, this is how it's going to happen. In my matrix, this is how it's going to go down. In my world, this is what's going to unfold. And you can have fun with it. And it gets you to dissipate the negativity. It gets you to dissipate the disappointment, hopelessness, etc. And so as you turn toward your desired outcome and you consistently imagine it, talk about it, expect it, intend it, what you don't want over here just fades in importance and emotional impact. And that's where you begin to reshape your reality, is not giving that incident excess importance, like your success with something you want in life is hanging on a different outcome with that person or situation. So, for example, if you turn your mind and you say, you know what, that relationship didn't work out, and I can really see how it was out of alignment with what I really wanted in my person. And maybe that person was like geographically undesirable, and that would have been really hard to work, but you were willing to do it. And then it falls away, and you're like, okay, you know what? Instead of feeling like, I lost again or I wasn't chosen again, you go, you know what? That's falling away because there's a better relationship with someone who's geographically more desirable and more, even more so in alignment with who I want. Or I didn't make that sales call. I didn't get that client on board to make my quota for sales this month. And instead of giving that any emotional charge of disappointment or angst or whatever, just like, yep, you know what? It's a numbers game. On to the next person, on to the next sales call. And that ability to be neutral and downplay the value and the importance you've given to that person or that sales call or that situation, you shrink it, you fade it, and it becomes inconsequential to your ultimate goal. That's the thing. When you really have worked the art of minimizing importance, is you can shrink that situation, that person, fade it, put it to the side, and it becomes inconsequential to the goal that you want. Now, let's say you want someone's behavior to change because they're disrespecting you, or it's not in harmony, or you're not in alignment together. You can try to talk with that person, but I find that if you've been butting your head against the situation where you've been trying to have a talk with this person, to come to a meeting of the minds, to get them to understand your point of view, and you feel like you're not making any headway, like they're still in the bad behavior, or they're still in the behavior that is conflicting with harmony for the two of you, they're still in the behavior that's conflicting with you wanting a more loving, intimate relationship, or a kinder relationship, or more connection in the relationship, whatever it is. Sometimes if you get to that point where you feel like we've had the talks, it's not getting better, we've talked and talked and talked, and we're not making any headway towards that goal that I'm wanting, that is your sign you're giving it too much importance. And the key is, in my opinion, what I've seen work amazingly, and I'm a big communicator. I'm all about healthy communication. I'm about being able to communicate with someone when things get difficult. It's easy to have really good communication with someone when you're on neutral ground, when it's not an emotionally charged or deeply personal thing, or it's about conflict, etc. But it can be very difficult to have those healthy types of conversations that really move the ball forward, that bring you closer, that get you more in alignment. Sometimes those conversations, you just feel blocked. And when that happens, let it go. Let go of trying to have that pivotal conversation. Let go of trying to have that turn the corner conversation that's going to just make you two come together and it's all going to gel. Let that go. And in your mind, meditate on the wish fulfilled. Ignore the current circumstance, which is ignoring the what is, stop resisting the what is of how this person is now that feels out of alignment with what you want or how you want to be with this person. And jump to imagining that you're already interacting that way. The harmony is already there. The love is there more intently. The intimacy is there. The connection is there. The reciprocity of feelings is there. Whatever it is that is what you're wanting from the conversation. So the conversation is a means to an end, right? You're wanting to have this conversation so that you can achieve some result, whether it's a sales call or a romantic conversation. But in the end, those conversations are still a means to an end. And if you feel like you're hitting the wall and frustrated with those things, that's your time to ignore circumstances and go right into when you fall asleep at night. That's the best time to do this, because as you're falling asleep, you drift into a hypnotic state. And this is where my clinical hypnotherapy background comes in. You know, people always talk about Neville Goddard saying that you should do your visualization in the time akin to sleep. They call it SATS. And basically why that works, the time akin to sleep, is that when you're falling asleep, you go from your normal brainwave state, which is beta. You go to alpha, which is the daydream state. You go down into theta, which is a deeper dream-like, almost sleep state. And then theta is your sleep state. Well, somewhere in alpha and theta, your conscious mind takes a step back. Your conscious mind starts to fall asleep. You get into a visualization. You imagine what you want. And the subconscious doesn't know the difference between real or imaginary, and you can get into the feeling of it even more intently, the wish fulfilled, what you like to have happen. And the key is to go to the not just the little small outcomes, although those can be, useful, meaning like I'm not a big believer in like using your time to manifest a text from someone or some simple things like that. You want to visualize the ultimate result, the ultimate thing you're wanting. And so when you're falling asleep at night, you have one little scene that you imagine, you ignore what's really happened. And as you could say, well, that's the truth. Well, the truth is whatever you express as your truth. So you fall asleep thinking about that desired outcome, and that can be very, very powerful. That's one of the best times to do that. Sometimes you can do things when you wake up in the morning too. So if I have a day where I've got a lot to do, or there's some outcomes that I'm really hoping for that are going to ensue, I will visualize how I want the day to flow, the milestones that I want to achieve that day. And then by the time I get out of bed, I drop it. I just ignore circumstances. I'm in the moment. I've set the intention. I've set my mind for the day. I've visualized how I want it to go, and then I drop it. And that's basically dropping focus on it, ignoring circumstances. And then basically in this process, you're not fighting circumstances as much. You're not assuming and going right to the negative that because this thing has happened or this thing hasn't happened, that you're not going to get what you want. You have to completely eliminate that And I'm a big believer in, if you really want to play a high level mindset game with yourself, high level, I mean, because it takes some finesse to do this, but it's fun if you can get into it. And that is labeling everything that happens to you as part of the plan. Everything is unfolding just as it should. And, you know, for me, it's like if I'm at work and a client cancels last minute, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess that means I'm supposed to have more time to do something. What is it I'm supposed to do right now? Like, I don't sweat the small stuff as much as I used to, because everything that unfolds, I trust that it's part of the plan, even if I can't see the connection right now. And I'm not going to tell you I do this all the time. But if you can do that more and more and more, in trusting that everything that's unfolding, even if it seems to on the surface in the moment go against your goal, if you trust that ultimately in the bigger picture, it's leading you towards your goal, the right goal at the right time, then you can ignore the circumstances. You can minimize the importance of it. So let's say you're shopping for a house and you find this house that you really, really want, and then it doesn't go through. Someone else bids you out for it, and you don't get the home, and you're all upset and you're like, oh, you know, I wanted this house and da, da, da. Instead, you say, you know what? Nope. Well, either maybe it'll fall through, or I'm going to find something else, and there must be something else out there better for me, better house, better SP, better person, better client, whatever it is. And you are able to stay neutral in your emotions or above the line, meaning those higher vibration emotions, positive expectancy, etc., by playing the game of believing and self-talk that everything that's happening is part of the plan. Everything that's happening is in the most energy efficient way, helping you to get to your goal. And why I say that is because sometimes, again, things don't unfold how we expect them to unfold. But if you can trust that it is, in the bigger scheme of things, the most efficient way to get you to that goal, time collapses, meaning you'll probably achieve that goal faster, because sometimes, you know, as they say, when one door closes, more open, and we just don't always see it when we're in the middle of it. So by consciously choosing to focus on what you want, you drain that emotional energy from undesirable circumstances. In fact, you pretty much can say you don't have an emotional charge with it. And then those circumstances are powerless over your mood. And those circumstances do not pulse out and draw in more of the same. Okay. Um, so you can use positive affirmations to reinforce the desired state. You can, again, look at where your consciousness, your thoughts, your beliefs are out of alignment and evident through this situation that you're not happy with or doesn't seem to be aligning with what you want. So that's a beautiful way to look at, in a proactive, positive way, things that happen to you as part of your reality feedback loop. A feedback loop that is giving you information about where you are in your thoughts and your beliefs. So if I'm, you know, if you're in a pattern of something that you don't want, if you're in a pattern of struggling with getting enough clients to provide the level of income that you like, and you keep getting frustrated that you're not getting the right clients, or it's too hard, or, whatever it is, then you have to ask yourself, what is my worldview that keeps creating these situations? What's my belief about myself, my self-concept that keeps creating these situations? And so then you become more neutral because you're looking at this situation to be your lesson, to be your mirror. When they say it's a mirror, it reflects back to you, nestled in the situation, hidden in the situation. It's a reflection of where you are with your beliefs, again, about yourself, your self-worth, what you can have. It's a reflection of your worldview, meaning what you believe about the world that you live in. It's inherently people are good or inherently people are bad. So then once you're aware of where your beliefs about yourself, about what you're worth, about what you can have, about your worldview are out of alignment, you've got to work on those one way or another. That's you upgrading the software. Because once you upgrade the software, then there is a time delay, typically, not always. But then once you upgrade the software to align your beliefs, your worldview, your self-worth, etc., with what you want or who you need to be or what you need to think to have the reality you want, it can take some time. So you've got to trust that. You've got to ignore the circumstances. If you look outside and you have sunflowers growing everywhere and you want roses, you don't get mad at the sunflowers. You go, okay, last spring I planted sunflowers. No wonder I have sunflowers. I want roses. Well, from now on, I'm going to only plant roses. Um, Funny metaphor there, but I don't know. For me, that one just, I go back to it again. So when I look at situations, I ask myself, what beliefs did I take on or have I held to be harvesting this situation right now? So let me just check and see if there's any questions. Yes. Jen says, what you resist persists. That's absolutely yes. Because when you're resisting something, and I do talk about this in my other podcast, if you want to go a deep dive into it, you can find it on my channel. So, but to tie it into this conversation today, when you resist something, there's an emotional charge with it, right? Because if I'm not resisting it, I don't care. I'm not thinking about it. I'm just looking the other direction. So we had a huge tropical storm come through here last week, and they were, it was pretty serious. Jim Cantor, or whatever, however his name is, was flying into Charleston. Ooh, when Jim shows up, we know it's serious, right? And they were like, oh, it could be, a tropical storm. It could be this amount of winds. It could turn into a Category 1 hurricane. And I've been having some flooding issues with my backyard. And I was very, very aware of the fact that I was able to see the situation, see that I was having these flooding issues, but minimize getting upset, minimize freaking out about it. I completely minimize going to the worst case scenario with an emotional charge. So let me explain that. I needed to do what I needed to do to prevent flooding from coming into my back sliding glass doors. But I didn't need to get upset, freak out, cry about it, emotionally imagine the worst case scenario to take right action. So I could become aware that there's a timeline, a possibility where my house floods, but I wasn't going to get upset. I can take right action. I did the things I needed to do to prevent that from happening. So I'm going to say I wasn't resisting it. I wasn't resisting the possibility of it happening. I simply was aware, acknowledged that there's a timeline where flooding could happen, took the appropriate action without any emotion, just emotionally neutral with it, turning my mind to, and the story that I landed on, and kept saying to myself, this is going to, it's going to be less than what people expected. So, you've heard me say before in some of my other talks, it's going to go better than expected. And this time it was like, oh, the storm is going to be less than what people expect. It's going to be less than expected. But I wasn't angsting about it. It was a matter of fact, nonchalant attitude of turning my mind to what I want. I wasn't resisting the possibility of what could happen. I wasn't resisting that a negative outcome could occur, because there's all those different timelines. Yes, there's a timeline where it happens, where it doesn't happen, where it happens today, where it happens, whatever. But I just comfortably, calmly turned my mind to the outcome that I wanted. And I just was very matter of fact about it, calm, cool, chill, but persisting into what I wanted and not angsting about not getting it. That's a lot of times, is we resist a situation, again, because we believe that that situation is a stepping stone to an outcome we want. Okay. But if you can pull back, go to your higher self level and say, you know what, there are many stepping stones that can be involved, will be involved typically with something I want. If it's a big thing, in most things, it's many stepping stones to get you to what you want. So the universe can interchange those stepping stones. The universe can easily interchange them. And so if you experience one that doesn't seem to, on the surface, in your awareness right now, be aligning with what you want, drop it, let it go. Ignore the circumstance in the sense of give it no emotional negativity, give it no emotional charge. Well, okay, then somebody else better is coming for me. Somebody else better is going to show up in my life. Well, that salesperson, that sales call didn't work out. Well, okay, then I'm going to find somebody better, and it's probably maybe going to be more in alignment with my philosophies of how I do for example, my financial advising. Maybe they wouldn't have been my best client, etc. So you're just in the flow with this constant expectation that everything's unfolding as it should, everything's working out in your favor. We don't always know the zigzag path to that, but the more and more, guys, that you can be in the flow with it, the more and more, that's the faith, the feeling of faith, that's the trust. So I'll leave you with this, an imagery, a meditation, just a flash it takes that really has helped me, is when I decide I want something, to manifest it. And it has to be head and heart aligned. There's other aspects to why we don't get what we want. If it's your head saying you should have it, but your heart's not in it, okay, well, that's a separate issue. And that has to be aligned. So, but if it's a head, heart aligned goal, desire that you're like, yes, you get the zing, you get the yummy feeling, as I call it, like, ooh, this would be so good to have, then once you're aligned that that's what you want, you imagine pulling down from the multiverse a road that you're on, or a river you're flowing down. And it's a dead end road. The river ends in one place, your goal, your desired outcome. The road dead ends in one place, your goal, your desired outcome. And then you breathe and you are looking for the signs. You're following your intuition. You're listening to your heart. You're having fun. That's the key thing. Have fun as you flow forward, and have as much fun and joy as you can possibly allow yourself to do. How much fun can I have while I'm on my way to this goal, because it's inevitable. It is going to happen. I'm going to have that outcome. I'm excited about it. And I'm just going to be joyful. And then the more fun that you can have, you're in higher vibration. You'll see more opportunities. You'll have more synchronicities. It's really amazing when you can just trust that it's like you got in your little kayak and the person at the side of the river that puts you in the kayak says, you just navigate down this river, ma'am. And when you get there, you will arrive at your destination. You will be where you want to be. Your only job is just navigate around the rocks, stay upright, and most of all, ma'am, have fun, right? So imagine it's like that, because it really is like that. So if you have any questions, you can drop comments when I post this talk, and you can drop your comments about it, questions about it. But I'm definitely open to you guys posting more questions that you have about what you'd like to see me talk about. It gets me super excited and energized to answer your questions and chat about things that maybe your sticking points, or you want to hear somebody talk about these concepts in a different way, or another concept that I haven't brought up yet. So meanwhile, get in your kayak, know where you want to go, and then your job this week, have fun while you know in your heart and in your mind you are on your way to that goal. It is inevitable. So your job this week is to just have fun on the way there. All right, guys. Love you all. Have a great week. Bye.